changes consistent with the map and conditional use permits. In accordance with city protocol, face coverings must be worn while attending this meeting, particularly given the number of attendees today and the inability to maintain adequate social distancing. You may remove your mask when speaking to the board at the podium centered between the board and the first row of seating. The board is made up of 7 members appointed by the City Commission and is assisted by the staff of the Community and Economic Development Department. Staff will advance any presentation slides that should have been provided prior to the meeting. The meeting is divided into 2 parts. The first part is a public hearing where we expect to hear new applicants explain their request and receive comments from affected parties. The second part of the meeting is termed the general meeting and primarily consists of acting on recommendations from staff about the cases that came up in the prior month's meeting. We invite everyone who wishes to participate to be heard. We do ask that you be concise in your comments and that speakers avoid being repetitive. That is, if several people have pointed out traffic concerns, there is no need to hear additional comments regarding the traffic again. But we would like to hear anything new that has not been addressed. In order to allow everyone to have an opportunity to speak, there will be a 3-minute time limit for each speaker, and the clerk has a timer for this purpose. We respectfully ask that you adhere to this rule. We also ask at this time that you silence all mobile devices. We thank you for being here, and I'll turn the meeting over to the Planning and Housing Manager, Teresa Mayo, to review any changes to the agenda.
Good morning, board members. We do have one change to the agenda, and that is dealing with item 4. This item was previously continued from a meeting. However, there has been a notice issue. The applicant is actually seeking CAC on the entirety of the 5.77 acres that's under consideration. And so we will have to renotice that with the correction and ask for a continuance to your February meeting. So if we have a motion to continue that, and that way we can move that item off the agenda.
I move to continue item 4 to the next meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And that's it for changes to the agenda, so we can move on with item 1.
All right, item 1, minor modification to the plan unit development zoning to adopt a site development plan and illustrate road improvements for a new 12,000 square foot warehouse office building with outdoor display and storage of heavy equipment on property located at 777 Laura Road. Owner, RFT General Partnership. Applicant, JSK Consulting. And this is consideration of a final decision.
Good morning, members of the board. Todd Margo, with Community and Economic Development, for the record. Staff is requesting a 1-month delay to this item to finalize the proposed improvements to Laura Road. The engineer at JSK and our Public Works Department are looking to come to some agreement as to what will need to be done to Laura Road to allow the company wrench project to move forward. I don't know exactly what step they're in right now, but I know they've been in contact with each other, and we feel more comfortable if we have an idea of what those improvements are going to entail before we move forward. So we would like a 1-month delay. We certainly anticipate and hope that bring this back to you next month. That's why we're not asking for a 2-month delay. Hopefully we can get this done in a month and be back in front of you in February.
Is there a motion to allow the 1-month delay?
I move to push this back to next month and have the 1-month delay.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Item 2.
Thank you.
Item 2, conditional use to allow 4 single-family attached dwelling units on property located at 24 Lake Hollingsworth Drive. Owner, Mark McDonald. Applicant, Harper Homes, LLC. And this is also a consideration of a final decision.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Philip Scarce. I'm the Principal Planner with Community and Economic Development. We have a case for you this morning. This is a conditional use permit to allow a special building type of a single-family attached at 24 Lake Hollingsworth Drive. You see here the current zoning of the parcel is RA3 single family. It's within the urban neighborhood context district. And it also is within the Lake Morton Historic District. Matt, if you can go back one slide, please. It's not working. Can you go back? Yeah, keep it there. Thanks, appreciate it. Per table 2.3-1 permitted uses within the Land Development Code, the special building type of single family attached is allowed through a conditional use permit, and that's why we're here today. This lot is historically platted as two 50-foot wide residential lots. It had a house on it facing Lake Hollingsworth. That house was demolished last year. And you can see the lot pattern here that it was historically divided. There's two 50-foot lots that create the whole. So technically, if they were come in today and request for a lot split, they could do two single-family homes facing Mississippi Avenue. And again, this like you see, it's an east-west direction. What this plan is, they would like to orientate the dwelling units towards Lake Hollingsworth. So the units would front Hollingsworth instead of Mississippi. So that would require some replatting after if this gets approved by the City Commission. So they'd replat in a north-south direction. Just want to give you a little bit of history on that. Some slides showing around the area. This is looking north into the subject site. You can see the college just to the east. There's single-family residential to the north and up Mississippi Avenue. Again, another slide. We're standing on the trail looking across the street, just give you an idea of what the character of the neighborhood is. These are some of the single-family along Lake Hollingsworth as well. This pointer is not working that very well today. Matt, can you advance it? Yeah, this pointer's not working. Okay, here's another. Whoa.
Crash?
Sorry about that. This thing must need charging. Thanks. Slower. Awesome. Next slide. Is it not advancing? Be some delay. Here's a slide looking north up Mississippi Avenue. Again, the college to the east there. Next slide. This is looking west into the site. I believe the next slide should be the site plan, the proposed site plan. Oh, no, this is giving you a look at the character of the single family that's on Mississippi Avenue. One stories, there is a two-story dwelling. The average front setback is around 15 to 20 feet. And this is the look up the alley that they would get access off of Lake Hollingsworth Drive. Next slide.
It's the network that it's going really slow because you
slowed it down.
didn't copy the local drive.
Whoa. Go back one. There we go. Okay, here's the proposed site plan. Again, it's going to be a 4-lot, 4-unit, single-family attached subdivision. These will be platted again, like I mentioned. Currently, it's platted in an east-west direction. They're going to have to replat to a north-south direction. The setback along Lake Hollingsworth is consistent with Table 3.411. They have a minimum of 10 and a maximum of 20 for the front setback. Side yard setback is 5, a rear setback of 15, with a 10-foot spacing in between each building there. You can see in the middle there's a 5-foot setback from each grouping, so there'd be a 10-foot space between the two units, or between the two structures that contain 2 units. The code requires a minimum height of 2-story. The maximum height is 40 feet. I believe they're proposing it's a 35-foot height structure. 38, excuse me. Thank you very much. And this did go before the Historic Preservation Board. Matt, whenever you get a chance to go to the elevations, yeah, this is the front and rear elevations with a rear-loaded garage. These elevations did go to the Lakeland Historic Preservation Board. It passed it did pass 4-3 margin, so there was some concerns by the HPB, but nevertheless it was passed by the Historic Preservation Board. We also received 16 petitions in opposition to the request. The opposition petition, there were 16, they were the same, they were signed by local residents. They object to any variances, zoning setbacks requirements for any conditional use and allow 4 3-story townhouses to be built on lots 9 and 10. They objected to ingress and egress via the one-way alley, total square footage of the intended townhouses, the height, additional congestion of 8 or more vehicle owners for the owners, and the quality of life is, they state, as we know, it will change not for the better. So we received 16 of those petitions. We also received a letter from the Lake Morton Neighborhood Association, which I was asked to read into the record. So if you bear with me, this is a long letter here, so I'll get through it here. On behalf of the Lake Morton Neighborhood Association, I'm writing to express opposition to the conditional use application proposing to establish 2 single-family attached dwellings on property at 24 Lake Hollingsworth Drive. We are not opposed to density in the neighborhood where infill construction is compatible in scale and massing with adjacent established residents. We have supported the construction for 3 single-family attached dwellings, as well as a triplex, quadplex, and the Southern Florida College apartments along Ingram Avenue, which are located in multifamily zoning. However, placing 2 single-family attached buildings next to one another at the maximum height permitted under the special building type regulation and the single-family zoning to replace a single-family detached dwelling house on this property is not compatible with the historic character of the majority of the homes within the South Lake Morton Historic District. The height of these proposed buildings, in combination with their minimal building setbacks from Lake Hollingsworth Drive, will result in building massing that overwhelms the neighborhood residential buildings. Of equal importance is a negative precedent that will be established by approving the proposed as a maximum height over the single-family attached structures was 2-story, or approximately 28 feet at mean height. While taller structures exist in the neighborhood, they were achieved either by their multifamily zoning or through much discussion and revision. This precedent may have unintended consequences with the potential redevelopment of the St. Joseph's Academy property and the properties within our neighborhood with the single-family zoning designation. We are disappointed that Historic Preservation's Board approval this request due to the out-of-character density, height, and front setbacks of the structure. However, the fact this proposal was not was narrowly approved by their vote of 4-3 should account for some trepidation in their decision that is worthy of your consideration. In closing, we support compatible infill construction and density where the underlying infrastructure will support it. It is the proposal. This proposal is not appropriate within the South Lake Morton Historic District as designed. The district is protected by historic designation for a primary reason, with the maintenance of the historical character. The proposal before you does not, reflect historic character in its height, front setback, or massing. On behalf of the Lake Morton Neighborhood Association, I respectfully ask that the City Planning and Zoning Board to deny this application, and that is sent from Julie Townsend, the board member and spokesman of the Lake Morton Historic Association. So, with that, I know the applicant has some better color pictures that they can show you. We'll put them there, and I'll let them come up and present their case, but I'll stand for any questions you may have in the meantime. All right.
Good morning, Commission. First of all, thank you for serving on the commission. I serve on a similar board in the county, so I know the time it takes to do this, so I appreciate that.
Could you give your name and your address?
My name's Sean Harper. My address 1420 South Florida Avenue, Lakeland, Florida 33803.
Thank you.
And I have here today Tom Gage. He's the designer, and he puts all this stuff on paper for us. He's planned this, and he's planned the site for us. So what we're here today is to come back to you for a conditional use permit. We have 2 lots that are situated towards Mississippi, and the 2 homes that were there before for many, many years, I think for 60 or 70 years, were situated towards Lake Collinsworth. So to us, as to keep the beautification of Lake Collinsworth Drive, we don't think it's the right thing to do to situate our homes towards Mississippi as the lots face. So what we're here to do today is to ask for a conditional use permit to redraw the lot line towards Lake Collinsworth so we can situate our homes towards Lake Collinsworth. I've been building homes in Polk County and Lakeland since '99, and I built some homes that were good additions to the city and the Lake Collinsworth area over the last few years. So what we want to do is build a beautiful product that would be a great addition to Lake Collinsworth Drive. We based our thought pattern and our direction on some of the other things that the Land Development Code has allowed in the Historic District in the recent past with similar products and properties with the attached homes. And I think there's been precedent set for our request. And again, what we're trying to avoid is having the side of a home facing Lake Collinsworth Drive. And you know, we have the right to build our homes facing Mississippi right now. What we're just asking for is to allow us to face them to Lake Collinsworth, where it makes more sense, and I think the public and the residents around the area would appreciate. As you can see by our color renderings, these are going to be a great addition and match the scaling and sizing of the area, and also be a great addition to Lake Collinsworth. So I'm going to let Tom speak towards how he came up with the design and working with the city and some of the things they wanted to see, because we did accommodate that, and we want to be, we want to work with the city and help beautify this area. Thanks.
Good afternoon, or good morning. I appreciate you allowing us to speak to you today. My name is Tom Gage, and we've been working on this project for
Mr.
quite
Yates,
some
could you
time.
give your address also, please?
Excuse me?
Could you give your address also?
Sure, I live at 907 East Lime Street in Lakeland. So on this slide that's up on your screen right now is an example of an orientation that we could do the houses, given the lot layouts as they currently are. The design of this would be with 2 attached units on each lot. This precedent has already been set in other places in the historic district. In the last few years, there's been several buildings built like the houses built like this, with a home in the front and a detached garage in the back with an access off the alley. And given our lot design, as it currently stands with the lot divided the way it is, this would allow us to still put 4 units complete as shown, but with, as you can see at the bottom of the screen, a unit side of the building facing Lake Hollingsworth with a garage also on the Lake Hollingsworth side. And this would be with the fronts of the houses facing Mississippi. So as we look at this, we don't see that, I mean, square footage wise, we can still do the same amount of square footage as our other design, but this doesn't seem very beautiful to look at. Someone driving down Lake Hollingsworth, I don't think would want to see the side of a house, see a garage. This is another alternate possibly too, but go over to the first slide, I think, that shows the lot layout as we're proposing. So on this lot layout, what we try to do is make it so that the homes face Lake Hollingsworth as the previous 2 homes did that were on the property. There was actually 2 homes on the property. There was a residence and then a side detached mother-in-law suite or cottage. So there's 2 homes that were on the property previously, and they both face Lake Hollingsworth, and that's how it's been since they were constructed back in the 50s. And so in keeping with that, we're still interested in having our homes face Lake Hollingsworth, as I think that makes sense. The fronts of the homes are designed so as to maximize views of the lake and also to be pretty. No garages on the front. We had access for garages and full parking. There's enough parking allotted inside in the garages for 10 cars, which would be more than adequate compared to the other houses that are on the street as well. So we're providing parking, enclosed parking actually. Access to this would be off of the alley, flowing through into the back of the houses and then back onto Mississippi, as the arrows indicate on the portion at the top of the page as you see there. Because we want to take into consideration where does parking happen and how does that relate as far as traffic flow. This is also the first property on the alleyway, so you're not going to have a lot of traffic going up the alley behind the other houses that are all the way up the alley, because it is a narrow alley as it goes up further up. So that's something that we looked at as well. But access is very simple, in and out the back of these buildings. So that's one thing that we looked at. The other thing is the, can we go to the 2 slides over? One more, there we go. So the other thing we looked at too is the size of the buildings, and we addressed the size, the overall height. That was one of the concerns from the Architectural Review Board. And we eliminated a rooftop, covered rooftop decks on 2 of the units to get our roof heights lower. There's flat roofs on these buildings so that we're not more than, our mean height is actually 35 feet, not 38 feet, which is a total height. So we're well under the 40-foot limit for what we're called for. The other thing is this site is on the base of a hill, and the fronts of these buildings will be close to Lake Hollingsworth level, with the site, with the road going uphill behind it. And if you scroll to the last photo, keep going. It's the last one in the set. One more. There you go. So this is a photo that was taken halfway up the street on Mississippi looking down the street. And as you can see, there's a great deal of elevation change. So even with our building being at 35 feet tall, mean roof height at the base of this hill, you're not impeding the visual views of anybody up the street. And that's something too that we're interested in, is that we're not trying to detract from the neighborhood, but to add to it. And as Lake Hollingsworth is further developed, we feel that this is something that fits in with it. We try to be creative in our design and incorporating historical aspects into all 4 units. And it doesn't, from what we can tell by the elevation change, you're not going to be impeding the front porch views of any of the homes up Mississippi. Let's see. What else? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm had to keep scrolling back and forth, but go back to I think the 3rd or 4th slide where we have a side elevation. There we go. Excuse me. So this is a side elevation. This is as our design is facing the college. If we were to change our design where we have the houses orientated towards Mississippi, this would be sort of the view you would see from Lake Hollingsworth. It'd be the side of a building, the side of a house, which isn't nearly as attractive as a front of a house. And so in our design, it's still very attractive as you were to travel up Mississippi, but I don't think it's worthy to be facing Lake Hollingsworth. And that's why we're looking to change the orientation of the lot lines so that the houses do face Lake Hollingsworth, just like the previous residences did. Oh, and that's another thing too, is we've actually created, from our initial design for the Architectural Review Board, we've actually increased the breezeway distance in between the units as well. Previously, it had only been 6 feet, or 5 or 6 feet, and now it's 10 feet in between the units as well. So again, there's more potential for views and sight lines from other neighbors, and also there's a separation between the houses. And in between the units, there's a larger separation now as well. And that'd be between the center 2 units. Let me see notes. But that would be basically the reason why we would want to change our direction of the property dividing, is so that we could orientate towards Lake Hollingsworth. Yeah, do you have any questions or anything that we can address?
I have a question. Because you have back alley access, how wide is that alley, and is it big enough for the garbage trucks to go through? How is that going to be handled?
Currently, the garbage truck travels the alley the way it is. And so.
Correct. That is incorrect. The garbage trucks do not go down the alley. I'm picked up on Mississippi.
Okay.
If we could ask that anyone making comments, you will have to come up to the podium to make those comments so that they can be recorded. Thank you.
So the alleyway currently is 10 feet wide, is what is listed on the plat.
What's the square footage of the buildings?
I don't have that in front of me because that's not what we were going to be talking about today. Do you know that, Mark? Square footages of those units?
The 2 middle ones are 2350.
All right, so the 2 center units are 2350 total square footage?
That includes the garage?
Yes, ma'am. That's under roof.
Okay.
And the end units were 30. Yeah, the end units were 33 under roof, 3,300 square feet under roof.
And what is the grade from the front of those lots to, as you say, it's not impeding any view, so what is the grade from the front of that lot to the back of that lot?
There's an elevation change of between 8 to 10 feet from the front to the back. And at this point, you don't see it on our design, but we're actually going to put a retention wall on the backside, so as the parking in the back is actually going to be lower. When you come off of Mississippi, it'll be level with Mississippi, the entrance and exit in the back.
So we're not going to raise
So
the
we're not
site?
raising the site, we're actually going to lower the site as far as the rear elevation goes. Again, and just trying to not make them higher off the ground, especially in the back.
Any reason you chose 3 stories instead of 2?
Well, with having parking, that's having a garage and incorporating a garage, the garage takes up over half of the first floor of each of these. So if we were to do that, you're greatly inhibiting living space. And as they are right now, these are not large living spaces. There's 3 bedroom, And we couldn't create adequate space because of the garages being inside. So hence 3 stories was why we did that.
Okay, so the 10-foot wide alley for access, and that would be for trash trucks, delivery vehicles, that type of thing. What about open parking for guests or anything where?
I'm glad you brought that up. One of the possibilities is that as we look at that, and this is no different than anyone else on the street as well.
Right, I know, because parking's an issue in this area.
We have space for additional 3 lots, or not parking spots, off of the alley if we were to impervious pave against the building. And so we could create some parking spaces along the building on the alley side. And right now we have a space for 3 for additional parking. So that would, right now we're accounting for 10 cars. So if we add 3 more, that would be enough parking on our site for 13 cars.
And are there going to be any restrictions imposed by the property owners or the tenants on parking outside their garages and things like that?
Yes, that's part of that. Excuse me. Oh, go ahead.
We've been discussing that, Jerry, and we're thinking of making a deed restriction to where they have to encompass their cars into the garage.
Okay.
That's what we talked about. I mean, we can put those restrictions on, where they put their trash cans. We can create space in there. We've been thinking through all of that, and we will make sure that we address that in our final restrictions on the properties.
Something else I'd like to point out about these properties too is that these are single-family residences. These are not designed to be apartments. These aren't designed as condominiums that are folks coming in and going. By design, these are higher-end homes. These are something that people are going to want to live in, and these are single-family residences. And so I think that's something too. This is a design from the beginning to be permanent residence, not something that is, for student rentals. This is going to be it's higher end as far as. Oh, I'm sorry, Susan.
Oh, that's okay. I was just going to ask. This has been approved by the Historic Committee, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And what we're discussing here today is, do you put these facing north and south, or do you make them east and west?
That's correct.
And you're saying the fronts of the buildings would face Lake Hollingsworth as opposed to the side of the building, and that's really all that we're considering today?
If I might clarify, it's for conditional use for both the use and the orientation, the setbacks, and the height, compatibility with the surrounding neighborhood, not just the orientation of the lots as the applicant represented. So
Okay.
it's the whole thing.
Okay.
But from my understanding, according to the code as it's currently written, we already meet the requirements for height. We're under the 40-foot limit. We're allowed to build up to 3 stories. We've already addressed those items in our design as we began this early on. And so as far as our understanding of code and the feasibility on that side, we've addressed the code issues.
And your setback requirements, you've met those?
Yes, we've been working through those as well.
Yes, the issue is this is infill in a single-family neighborhood. So we're looking at the compatibility with the surrounding fabric, not like we're doing a new greenfield type development of a townhome. So compatibility is the main consideration for a conditional use.
So there's some other examples of structures like this already that are in the historical district. Within the last few years, there's been several that have been constructed that are essentially duplexes. They face the street, they have 5-foot setbacks, they have a garage in the back off of the alleyway. What we're asking here isn't different than other properties that have already been developed in the historical district.
Any other questions?
I'd like to just, Mr. Lyon, excuse me, Mr. Lyons, if you could just clarify what the use would be by right on the property versus why the conditional use is required, because I don't know if that's clear to me.
Yeah, just good morning for record, Matthew Lyons, Committee on Economic Development. The zoning is RA4 single family, so it only permits single family detached homes by right. That would be 1 dwelling unit per lot or parcel. As an exception, through the conditional use process, they can request single family attached, which will allow them to get slightly higher density, potentially in this case, 2 units per lot there. But the land development code does specify criteria for that approval, and in this case, it is compatibility with the existing neighborhood character, other considerations that are part of that. So it's not by right per se. It has to go through that process and that review. And the other examples that the applicant referenced, those both went through the same process. They were done as conditional uses. They were not done by right. They were both done in the exact same zoning, and they were subject to the same criteria.
Thank you.
Just by comparison, just down the road are the Lake Hollingsworth condominiums. How tall are those in comparison to what you're proposing?
Those are 3-story as well, with a garage on the basement, on the lower level. I don't have a way to measure those accurately, but they're within that 35-foot for sure.
These all are attached homes, right?
These would be single-family attached is what they are. They're attached at the back, they're 2 pairs, and they're attached at the garage portion in the back. Visually, from the street, we're trying to make them look like they're individual homes, just by design, so they look like they're not a condominium or a townhome as they're being referred to. We're trying not to call them townhomes, as they're not actually sharing a party wall other than at the garage. So they're single-family attached.
And I think that's important to keep those breezeways through the individual units. Attaching them at the garage, you won't really notice it from the road, but we didn't want to eliminate that greenway through the middle between them.
And will that have public access at all, or is that going to be gated, or?
Well, the 10 feet between them, I don't think at this point we're doing gating or fencing around it as far as making it so it's not accessible. I mean, we want it to look inviting. As soon as you put fences up, it doesn't look very inviting. And as you go around Lake Hollingsworth, you don't see fences on the lake. And there'll be porches with railings and things like that to define space, but I don't see right now that we'll have a fence around it to make it look, enclosed like that.
Can we put the picture back of the elevation? Sorry, the color one. Thank you.
So if there's the angled one too. You want not this one? I did one.
Yeah, you have the angle one?
You have I think it's the next slide over. Thank you.
There we go.
So again, just as a visual, we want this to be look inviting from as you drive past on Lake Hollingsworth. So no, there's not going to be gates and fences and things like that. Again, we want them to look like homes, something that you'd want to live in.
And we don't think it makes sense to situate them towards Mississippi, so you avoid this side of the house on Lake Hollingsworth Drive. That's very important.
The other thing is too, if it matters, we've spoken to the folks that live to the right of this home and the one directly behind it as well, shared the plans with them, shared what we're doing, what our visions are, and neither one of them shared objections with us.
So the people who lived in the little greenhouse?
Yes.
Are okay with it?
Yeah, we've already spoken with them. Great folks, they just recently moved in, and they're not opposed to it because as they've even walked the lot with us, the way their home is oriented, it has a driveway against our property line. As we put in green space or that pavered parking way behind our house, there's over 40 feet from their house to our house, these buildings. So there's a great deal of space separating the buildings as far as it's not blocking or inhibiting views of theirs to the lake, especially from even their front porch, and even the side of their house. So that's something too that we're interested. We don't want to be disruptive at all, especially to the people immediately there. And up the alley, there's no homes on the alley that have views anyways. And that's the other thing too, as we've looked at it, that we're not blocking the views from the alley on that side.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who has any presentation in favor of this right now? Or is those all the folks you have with you, Mr. Harper?
Are the applicants done with their presentation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyone in opposition would like to speak?
Yes, sir. Distinguished members of the board, distinguished guests, neighbors.
Sir, could you give your name and your address, please?
My name is Eddie Winoker. I live on 1125 Mississippi Avenue. And you already heard that all of the people in the neighborhood have voiced objections to this massive build. I represent all of the property owners in the 250-foot radius.
Sure, I think I picked up.
250-foot radius. All of the 16 objections come from the people in the neighborhood on Mississippi and Melton. The only owner I haven't been able to contact is Wyndon Newton at 117 Mississippi. I do have an objection from the renter who lives there, and he is a resident, a voting resident. When I received my letter from the city, this right here, I had to read it 4 times before I realized that the site plan was on the back of the front page. Now, I did not see an elevation. Y'all have seen the pretty elevations that they have developed. This elevation right here was not included in the mailing from the city. The nice staff down at the zoning department was kind enough to give me this copy, which I distributed to the neighbors in the neighborhood so they'd have the full picture. Okay, the city says that those townhouses are single-family dwellings. I'm not going to argue that point. But we object to the proposed project. We request that you deny any conditional use. You might as well give them a 0-lot setback on this project. It's too massive for the neighborhood. It overpowers everything there. Granted, the college next door, they have a humanities building. They have 8 lots of property there to build on, but they chose to set that building back 125 feet from Lake Hollingworth Drive. Ms. Ciez, you asked about the Historical Review Board. Well, back in 1990, this was the first design guidelines for the historical district. The city has now upgraded. They have on their website the guidelines, 315 pages. Here it is right here. And in here, page 61, these lots are single-family residence. Has been for years. Now, what is the single most important thing required on any development, any construction project that you propose? Anyone? Property, real estate, acreage. You've got to have enough property to develop your proposed construction project. This lot 9 and 10 does not have the acreage, the property to build what they're proposing to build. These lots are 50-foot lots. They're not 50 feet. These lots are parallelograms. So when you go property line to property line, you've got maybe 48 feet, 8 inches. So you don't have 50 feet. You even have less property space to develop what they're asking to develop. Now I have a slight demonstration. I know y'all have asked to bring new things forward, so I'm not going to rehash. But in this design catalog, on page the Lake Hollingsworth condominiums, they set back 34 feet to the front plenum, 61 feet to the vertical building line, 44 feet to the stairs. The side setback on Success is 24 feet. Right here, page 97. 315 pages of design guidelines. These 2 pages are the only 2 that pertain to townhouses. It says, this building type can be configured to respond to existing conditions on a block with historic houses by varying its height and massing proportions to achieve a better location in which the local context. This project is too massive. It doesn't fit. And we oppose the building of it as proposed. If I may, I have a slight demonstration I would like to show you. I think this will pretty much sum up our objection. This bucket represents lot 9 and 10. Oh, look. 2 single-family residences. Maybe 1 really nice residence on 2 lots. Mr. John Weber's house is just to the south, is a 2-story white house. It sets back 34 feet from Lake Hollingsworth. It occupies 3 lots. 3 lots, 1 residence. Look. It fits. It fits. Now,
Sir, you're at your 3-minute limit, if you can wrap it up.
may I have just one more second, sir? Let's take 4 3-story massive townhouses. They are considered single-family dwellings. Guess what? It's not a good fit. And I appreciate y'all giving me time to voice my opinion on behalf of all of us in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Anyone else in opposition? Sir.
What, are you coming up to comment? Okay.
My name is Hugh Turbyville. I live at 16 Lake Hollingsworth. I sort of feel like we're taking New York and putting it into Lake Hollingsworth. I have a real problem, not with building there, but just, I'm right across the street, cat-a-corner, just a little. I just found out about this recently, and I knew they were going to build there, but it just looks like we're doing a misfit on the property as far as going in. I know we have Florida Southern, and we have different buildings, different designs, but it just looked like to me, that we're just trying to make Lakeland, Florida, New York City or something. It just doesn't look like it fits to me. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anyone else in opposition? No further comments? I think we're supposed to render a final decision on this today.
What was the staff recommendation? If we can.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to hear that too.
And Mr. Chair, it would also be appropriate to give the applicant a final rebuttal to the public
Okay,
comment as
I'm
well.
sorry. Mr. Harper, do you have anything else to say in rebuttal?
Board, sir, I appreciate your demonstrations, and I appreciate your concern. And again, as we've looked at this product early on, we were just trying to figure out how do we be creative in space, creative in design, something that adds and doesn't detract. Again, that's why we have varying style designs on the fronts of these buildings. It's not to add congestion, as we've addressed a lot of these parking issues, congestion issues. It's single family. This is something that I believe that people would be interested in making their homes here. And it flows with the street as you go past the college, then go past these buildings, and then go past the big colonial on the hill. These are all larger buildings. And you see this in other places around the lake as well. Larger houses are on the lake, smaller houses are up the hill. And that's sort of the way it works as you work around the lake as well. So it's not out of design keeping. I mean, just 2 blocks up, we have condos on the lake that are multifamily condominiums. That's just 2 blocks away. So I feel that, this is something that does work and can present itself as a really great addition to Lake Hollingsworth and make this a very desirable piece of property, and also potentially add value to the homes up Mississippi and in the surrounding area. And there's lots of ways to look at this as a positive. But thank you for your time today. Appreciate your hearing our case.
No, just go ahead.
Could I come back on?
Can he come back up?
It's the pleasure of the board, but typically, due process would require that the applicant is presenting the case to you, that they always get the last word. So if you're going to entertain more comment, that's the pleasure of the board, but typically the applicant would then be given an opportunity to respond.
Mr. Turbo, if you want to give you 1 minute, and if you have a response to that, and then that will be it. Assume there's no one else in opposition.
Why don't your group just go out there and look at the property physically? Just look at the whole thing and then put it back in perspective to what's happening.
Okay, thank you.
And I think that might be helpful because we have a large 2-story house up on a hill next to us. Scaling will be maybe even with that, or even lower. And then we have a gigantic thing on Florida Southern. It's beautiful, but the scaling is huge. So we think we match the scaling. We prefer to face our homes towards Lake Hollingsworth, as opposed to the side of the home towards Lake Hollingsworth. I think we're making a better addition to what we have the right to do there now. That's why we're here for the change. So I really appreciate your time, and I ask for a favorable vote for our request. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Morning. Again, for the record, my name is Philip Scarce, Community and Economic Development. This was only a conditional use or public hearing today. Staff will come back next month and provide a recommendation with conditions. As far as the architectural criteria, those things were addressed by the Historic Preservation Board. Even though it was like we mentioned before, it was a close vote, they still spoke and they approved that. So we're not debating the design, but and what we'll do is we'll come back, evaluate, look at the compatibility, we'll take all the questions and comments that were asked today, and we'll make a recommendation next month with conditions. So I'm can answer any questions that you may have.
The adjoining residents, the resident of the greenhouse or the next door neighbors, they have not sent any letters or anything in on this item?
There were 16 petitions, and his.
Johnsons did object. The Johnsons did object. Laura and Randall Johnson, they did object.
Sir, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we record these proceedings. They are legal proceedings, and so comments need to be made in the order that they're of the process. They need to be recorded. So I appreciate your participation and everything, but we're trying to do this in an orderly manner. So if you could just respect that, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
That gentleman, he did highlight the neighbor in the greenhouse. We had 16 petitions come in. Not all of them have addresses. 1116 Melton Avenue, 1117 Mississippi. There's one with no address. Another one with no address. Hoover Trust, Melanie Hoover. 1125 Melton. 1125 Mississippi Avenue, which is Mr. Winokur. Steve Bickert, 119-121 Mississippi.
Is the greenhouse 1131 Mississippi? That's immediately to the north. So it'd be 1131 Mississippi, and the owner's last name is Johnson.
There is one from Randall and Laura Johnson. So, 1113 Mississippi Avenue.
1131.
1131, excuse me.
Mr. Scares, can you also clarify, because our agenda has this noted as a final decision, and we're going to have another hearing on this, or you're requesting that there be another hearing. Can you clarify that whether that was explained to the applicant and to what extent the public is aware of that, or?
Yeah, so we sent the notices out as a public hearing. I don't recall as being of the final decision today. It is the discretion as the planning manager when we have controversial cases that we come have a public hearing and then we come back the next month. This is the case, and I did explain that to the applicants.
So historically, we've listed conditional uses as being up for consideration of final decision. That's just the way that they are placed on the agenda, because more often than not, they are heard at one public hearing and then voted on at that same public hearing. The exception is when we have controversial cases, and so sometimes we don't know of those controversies until after the agenda is published. So it's just a matter of practice that we list it as final decision, but it doesn't always mean that you need to take action at the hearing. So as Mr. Scares explained, we did make the applicant aware that because we started receiving objections and concerns, that this would not be voted on today, and that we would need time to address all of the concerns and come back with a written recommendation to you next month.
Anybody else have any questions of the city? Okay. All right, thank you, sir, and we will.
Motion to move this item for final decision next meeting.
Second.
Mr. Chair, before you vote on that motion, the applicant is raising his hand. If the board would like to hear from him, it's the pleasure of the board.
Yeah, I'm sorry, come back up, but it wasn't our understanding until yesterday when I talked to Philip that we weren't getting a final vote on this today. So what is the process for the next hearing? Are we going through this process again? This is totally atypical to what I'm used to in these proceedings.
Okay, so the rules of procedure would allow the board to make a final decision today because it's a conditional use. The rules of procedure don't require 2 hearings for conditional uses. That said, as staff is indicating, whenever there is opposition to a project, the staff likes to collect all of that comment and then come back for another hearing where they will then present a recommendation based on all the feedback that they're getting from the neighborhood. And so they're requesting that this hearing be postponed to next month's meeting and that the board take action at that meeting, and so that staff can consolidate all the comments and present a recommendation to the board. And so now the board has made a motion to postpone